Graham Langley didn't expect to be dodging fists at 2 in the morning, especially not over a spilled drink and a woman he didn't know. He was only supposed to be filling in as a part-time night security guard at the Marlowe, one of Chicago's most exclusive high-rise hotels. The pay wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. And with his daughter Penny's school trip coming up and bills stacking higher than his pride, he couldn't say no. He'd taken the shift last minute from a guy who called out sick, never imagining it would lead to the most insane night of his life. "Back off," he said firmly, stepping between the drunk guy in a tux and the woman in the emerald silk gown who clearly wanted nothing to do with the scene. The drunk guy lifted his chin. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Nope," Graham said flatly, "but I know she said no." The guy lunged forward. Graham caught his wrist mid-air and twisted just enough to stop him without causing a scene. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man spat a curse and stormed off, muttering about lawsuits and family lawyers. Graham turned to the woman, brushing non-existent dust from his shirt. "You okay?" She looked at him like she was trying to figure him out. Her dark hair was swept up in a sleek twist, her lipstick flawless despite the late hour. "I'm fine, thank you." Her voice was low, calm, but something about her eyes made Graham pause. She didn't look fine. She looked like someone who hadn't been truly comfortable in weeks. "I'll walk you out just in case," he offered. She hesitated, then nodded. "All right." They walked in silence past the glimmering marble lobby and the doorman who barely glanced at them. The city buzzed outside, but the street was quiet. Her heels clicked against the pavement. She stopped beside a sleek black car parked at the curb, the kind of car Graham used to dream about before life knocked the dreams right out of him. "You didn't have to step in," she said, turning to him, "but I'm glad you did." "Didn't feel right just standing there," he shrugged. "Some guys think money means they can do whatever they want." For a second, her lips twitched, like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or not. "You have no idea." He tilted his head. "You seem familiar. Do I know you from somewhere?" She opened her car door. "Probably not." "Name?" he asked, almost teasing but a little curious now. "Nola Owens." Something about the name tugged at the back of his mind. But before he could place it, she slid into the car and shut the door. The driver pulled away. Graham stood there for another second, frowning. Then he shook his head and went back inside. The next morning, Graham was back in his real job working the loading dock at a grocery store. By noon, his back ached, his hands were raw, and his mind was still replaying last night. Not the fight. Her. Nola Owens. That name stuck with him all through his shift and into the afternoon, when he picked up Penny from her after-school program. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" she asked, bouncing into the passenger seat. "Ice cream? We're in the middle of November," he grinned, "but yeah, why not?" They went to the cheap place by the train station, where the cones were always a little too soft, but the owner slipped Penny extra sprinkles every time. "So," she said, licking her cone, "did you fight bad guys at work last night?" Graham laughed. "One, but he was drunk and not very scary." "I bet he was scared of you." "Nah, but I did meet someone." Penny's eyes lit up. "A lady." "She was just someone I helped. I don't think I'll see her again." But he was wrong. 2 days later, Graham was back at the Marlowe for another overnight shift. He was checking the security monitors when the elevator dinged and the manager came rushing over. "Langley, you're not going to believe this," he said. "That woman from the other night, that was Nola Owens, as in Owens Group. She's the CEO." Graham blinked. "The what?" "The Owens Group owns this hotel, and about 20 more across the country. She's the reason we all have jobs." Graham stared at the monitor. And then the elevator doors opened again, and there she was. Same sleek hair, same composed face, but this time dressed in tailored slacks and heels instead of a gown. She spotted him immediately. "Langley, right?" Her voice cut through the lobby. "Yes, you're." "A CEO," she said dryly, walking up to him. Surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Hotel audit. I wasn't planning on it, but after the other night, I thought I'd check in personally." He looked at her, unsure what to say. She didn't owe him an explanation, but she offered one anyway. "I get followed, hit on, pitched, everyone wants something, but you didn't ask for anything, you just saw someone in trouble and helped." "I didn't know who you were." That's exactly why it mattered. He didn't know what to say to that. Then she added, "You still working tonight?" "Yeah." She nodded, "Then maybe I'll see you again." And she walked off like she hadn't just turned his whole night upside down. By the end of the week, Nola had visited the hotel 3 times. Once with a clipboard. Once in a midnight blue coat that cost more than Graham's car. And once with coffee 2 cups, one handed silently over to him at the desk. "You don't have to keep showing up," he told her. "I want to." There was something careful in her voice, like she wasn't used to wanting things or admitting it. And Graham, who'd spent years putting his head down and just surviving, suddenly wanted to know what she looked like when she laughed. What she'd be like if she ever forgot to be perfect. "Look," he said one night, "this isn't really my world. I don't know what you're doing here." "I'm not sure I do either," she replied, "but I feel safe with you." Graham didn't know how to respond to that. What do you say when a woman who probably had a private jet says something like that to a guy who bought his boots secondhand? So he said the only thing that felt real. "Then stay." And she did. "Are you always this stubborn?" Nola leaned back against the hood of Graham's truck, her arms crossed, her heels quiet against the cracked pavement of the staff parking lot. "I offered you dinner, not a job proposal." Graham shut the tailgate and tossed a tarp over his toolbox. "You say dinner, but it sounds a lot like charity. I don't like being a project." She raised an eyebrow. "You think go around handing out filet mignon to every guy who tells off one of my investors?" "Wouldn't put it past you," he muttered, but there was a trace of a grin behind the words. Nola glanced up at the sky. The city buzzed behind them, neon signs flickering in the distance, but back here, it was just the hum of the generator and the scent of oil and old concrete. "You always assume the worst about people." "I just don't assume the best without a reason," Graham said. He opened the driver's side door but didn't climb in. "Besides, I've got Penny tonight." "I figured. That's why I made the reservation early." He blinked. "You what?" "I called the restaurant before I left my office. 6:30. It's a place with crayons on the table and grilled cheese that's actually edible. I don't know what her allergies are, so I had them send me a full ingredient list ahead of time." Graham stared at her. "You did all that?" She shrugged. "I don't half-ass anything." There was a silence between them, soft and uncertain. Then he exhaled. "All right, but only because she's been dying to eat somewhere that uses cloth napkins." The restaurant was tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore, the kind of cozy place that tried to feel like a French bistro without the pretension. Penny sat across from Nola, legs swinging beneath the booth, a paper crown perched on her head courtesy of the hostess. "This is the fanciest grilled cheese I've ever seen," Penny whispered, eyes wide as the plate landed in front of her. "Technically it's brioche with smoked cheddar," Nola said, glancing at the menu. "But yes, it's still grilled cheese." Graham watched the two of them. Penny didn't usually warm up to strangers, but Nola wasn't exactly a stranger anymore. She answered Penny's questions about hotel elevators and room service like they were the most important inquiries in the world. And when Penny asked why she wore high heels if they made her feet hurt, she didn't dodge the question. Because sometimes people only take you seriously if you look like you're running the place, even if it hurts. Graham's fork paused in midair. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, something shifted. Later that night, as Penny fell asleep in the backseat with a paper crown still tilted on her head, Graham drove Nola back to her building. He pulled up in front of a sleek glass tower, all steel and seamless design, the kind of place that didn't have a number on the door because everyone who mattered already knew the address. "You didn't have to do all that," he said quietly. "I know," she glanced at the dashboard clock, "but I wanted to." He nodded, fingers tapping the steering wheel. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." She reached for the door handle, then paused. "You ever think about doing something different?" He frowned. "Like what?" "Security, logistics, you're calm under pressure. Good instincts. I've seen worse guys run entire ops teams." "I don't want a handout." "I'm not offering one," she said, voice steady. "I'm offering a door. Whether you walk through it is up to you." She stepped out, heels clicking once on the curb before the doorman opened the building's entrance for her. The next morning, Graham found an envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. No logo, no return address. Inside, a business card and a folded note. "I meant what I said, no pressure. N." He stared at it for a long time before slipping it into his glove box and driving to the hardware store. He didn't need a new wrench, but the place was quiet, and he needed somewhere to think. 3 days passed without a word. Then, on a Wednesday evening, Penny came home with a flyer from school. "Daddy, it's a fundraiser. There's going to be dancing and cupcakes. You have to come with me." Graham looked at the paper. It was a father-daughter dance, something he'd seen before but never attended. He was always working or too broke to rent a suit. "I don't have a tie," he said. Penny beamed. "Then we'll get one." Later that night, while she was brushing her teeth, his phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Graham Langley," he said warily. "I have a question." Nola's voice came through, clear and direct. "All right. Do you own a tux?" He frowned. "What?" "There's a gala this weekend. One of mine. I was going to go alone, but then I thought of you, and your daughter. It's family-friendly, black tie, you'd both be welcome." He hesitated. "You're inviting me to one of your events." "You protected me before you knew who I was," she said. "Trust you, that's rare." He glanced at Penny through the open bathroom door. She was humming under her breath, towel around her shoulders. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." But when he hung up, he already knew the answer. Saturday arrived with a flurry of nerves. Graham hadn't worn a suit in years, let alone a tuxedo. The one that arrived at his door that morning wasn't rented. It was tailored. Midnight navy, sharp lapels, cufflinks that caught the light like stars. He called the number on the card tucked inside the box. "You didn't have to send this," he said. "I know," Nola replied. When they arrived at the venue, a historic museum converted for the evening into a ballroom, Graham felt every eye glance their way. Penny gripped his hand tighter, dazzled by the chandeliers and the live quartet. Then he saw Nola. She stood near the entrance, wearing a pale silver gown that shimmered with each step. Her hair was swept to one side, revealing the curve of her neck and the steady line of her shoulders. When she turned and saw him, something in her expression softened. Not surprise, not pride, something warmer. "You clean up well," she said as he approached. "You don't look like a CEO tonight," he said, eyes taking her in. "Good, I wanted to look like someone worth dancing with." He glanced at Penny. "You'll have to ask my date first." But Penny had already found cupcakes. Hours later, Graham stood with a glass of water in hand, watching Nola navigate the room. She moved with purpose, but her shoulders relaxed the moment she looked his way. She approached slowly, heels silent now on the marble floor. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "Miss what?" "Normal, quiet. A life that doesn't revolve around board members and balance sheets." She was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, but I chose this. I built it." "And if you had to walk away?" "I'd want to know I was walking toward something better." He met her gaze. "And what if that better thing doesn't come with a penthouse?" She stepped closer. "Then I'd be smart enough to know what really matters." Graham didn't have an answer for that, but when she reached for his hand, he didn't let go. It wasn't until the following Thursday that Graham saw her again, and this time, it wasn't at a hotel, a gala, or a glittering restaurant. It was at the school. He'd taken an extra shift at the loading dock and arrived late to pick up Penny. She was sitting on the front steps, talking animatedly to someone in a long beige coat, her backpack perched on her knees. Nola turned when she heard his boots on the sidewalk. "I hope you don't mind," she said, brushing a strand of hair that had come loose from her chignon. "I was early for a meeting nearby and thought I'd stop by. Penny was telling me about her science project." Graham raised an eyebrow. "You just happened to be near her school." "I asked your sister where Penny went. I wanted to check in." She looked at him carefully. "I was going to wait by the car, but she recognized me." Penny jumped up and ran to him. "Daddy, guess what? MS. Owens knows about volcanoes, too." "She does, huh?" he said, pulling her into a one-armed hug. "I told her we're building one out of papier-mâché." Nola smiled, a little unsure now. "I can go if this is overstepping." He shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong." Still, the air between them felt different. Not colder, just heavier, more aware. Penny broke the tension. "Can she come by when we finish it? I want to show her how it explodes." Graham looked at Nola. "You up for that?" "I'd like that," she said, her voice softer than before. "All right," he said, "but you're bringing goggles. Safety first." As they walked to the truck, Nola glanced sideways. "You've been quiet." "I've had a lot on my mind." She waited, not pressing. He finally said, "You asked me once if I ever thought about doing something different. I've been thinking about it." Nola didn't answer right away. "And?" "I might be ready, but on my terms." "Good," she said, voice steady. "It should always be on your terms." He opened the door for Penny, then turned to her. "You're not just passing through, are you?" "No, I'm not." Something in his chest eased at that. She nodded once and walked away without another word. That weekend, she came by the apartment. Not in a car with tinted windows and a driver waiting at the curb. She parked down the block and carried a paper bag with groceries in one hand and a small box in the other. "I brought baking soda and vinegar," she said when Graham opened the door, "and chocolate chip cookies. I didn't bake them, but I figured bribery helps." Penny's delighted squeal pulled her inside before Graham could answer. "You ever worked with glue and newspaper before?" he asked as she set the bags down. "I've led acquisitions worth more than most small countries," she said. "But no, I've never made a volcano." "Then you're in for something special." It took the three of them the better part of the afternoon. Penny painted while Nola mixed the slurry. Graham cut strips and tried to keep the mess from overtaking the kitchen. When the volcano finally erupted, foam and dye spilling out into a controlled, glorious mess, Penny clapped like she was watching fireworks. "Best science weekend ever," she declared. Later, after she fell asleep on the couch with glue still on her fingers, Graham handed Nola a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know." He studied her. Why are you really here? Because I don't want to go back to a life where everything is calculated, where every meeting is rehearsed and every interaction is strategic. I'm tired, Graham. He didn't say anything at first. Then, you could have reached out to anyone. CEOs have a long list of options. I didn't want options. I wanted you. His hands curled around the edge of the counter. I don't know how to be what you're used to. I'm not asking you to be. He looked down. I don't have a second act planned. I'm doing the best I can, but I'm not sure it's enough for someone like you. She crossed the room slowly. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for something real. I don't have connections or stock portfolios. I don't need those. He lifted his gaze to meet hers. Then what do you need? She didn't hesitate. Someone who shows up, who tells the truth, who doesn't flinch when things get hard. I've got those. Then you've got everything. They stood in silence until Penny stirred on the couch, murmuring something in her sleep. I should go, Nola said, stepping back. I'll walk you out. At the door, she turned. I meant what I said about wanting you. He nodded. I know. But he didn't kiss her, not yet. She left, and this time, he watched her car disappear without wondering if she'd come back. Because now, he knew she would. The following week, it happened. Graham was finishing a shift when he was called into the manager's office. A man in a charcoal suit with an Owens Group pin on his lapel stood waiting. He introduced himself as the head of corporate logistics. I'm told you've got a sharp eye, Langley, he said. We're expanding our distribution network. MS, Owens gave me your name. Graham folded his arms. She didn't have to do that. She believes in putting the right people in the right places. You'd be leading a team, full benefits, training provided. Graham hesitated. I'd need time. Of course, but the offer stands. When he got home that night, Penny was already asleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling. Things were changing, fast. And for the first time in years, it didn't scare him. It thrilled him. The next day, he called Nola. You busy tonight? He asked. She sounded surprised. Not anymore. I want to show you something. He picked her up just after 7. No driver, no pretense. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair down for once. They drove to the lakefront. The wind was sharp, but the view was clear. My dad used to bring me here before everything went sideways, he said. Said it reminded him that even in a city like this, there's still quiet if you know where to look. She tucked her hands into her coat pockets. Why bring me here? Because wanted you to see the part of me that doesn't fit in boardrooms or black tie events. She turned to him. I like this part. He took a breath. I'm thinking of saying yes to that job. I hope you do. He stepped closer. But more than that, I'm thinking of saying yes to us. Her breath caught. You sure? I am now. And then, finally, he kissed her. Not because it was expected, but because it was inevitable. The first time Graham walked into the Owens Group headquarters as a team lead, he didn't wear a tie. He wore the same boots he always had cleaned, but still worn paired with a crisp button-down Nola had left hanging in his closet with the tag still on. The moment he stepped inside the sleek glass doors, he felt it, that electric hum of ambition, the kind that could either make you feel invincible or invisible. He chose neither. Instead, he walked in like he belonged there. Because now he did. Nola didn't meet him at the door. That wasn't her style. But she'd left something on his desk, a folded note under a black marble paperweight with just 2 words scrawled in clean ink. Keep going. He pocketed the note and got to work. The weeks that followed moved fast. The team he inherited was green but sharp, and under his lead, they began cutting delivery times across 3 cities. When a delay hit Chicago's central terminal, he didn't escalate it, he drove across town, walked the floor, and fixed it with his hands. Word traveled fast. People started paying attention. But it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building something real. One night, after a 14-hour shift and 3 missed meals, he stopped by Nola's place. Not the penthouse with the mirrored elevator, but the brownstone she'd quietly been renovating over the past year. She opened the door in bare feet and a paint-streaked t-shirt. He stepped inside and looked around. "You're still doing this yourself." "I like the work," she said, brushing dust off her jeans. "I spend so much time in rooms where everything's already finished. I needed something unfinished, something I could shape with my own hands." He glanced at the exposed beams overhead. "Looks like it'll take a while." "I'm not in a rush." He leaned against the doorway. "You ever think about what comes after all this?" She wiped her palms on a towel and met his gaze. "All the time. And I never used to see anything past the next quarter. Now I see late mornings and burnt toast. A kid yelling about her science fair. You, in this kitchen, threatening to throw out my coffee if I don't drink water first." He laughed under his breath. "That's oddly specific." "It's what I want." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was full, like the moment before a first snowfall. Then he lifted the small box he'd been holding since he walked in. "You left this in my glove box," he said. She took it slowly, recognizing it instantly. It was the cufflink box she'd given him before the gala. He hadn't told her, but he'd kept it, and inside, nestled between the velvet folds, was a ring. Not flashy, not branded, just a narrow band with a brushed gold finish and a single diamond set flush in the center. Nola looked down, then back at him. "You're not asking, are you?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. "No," he said, "because I already know the answer." She didn't say yes. She kissed him instead. They got married in the backyard of the brownstone 4 weeks later. There were no press releases, no photographers, just Penny in a navy dress with lace sleeves and a bouquet she assembled herself from a corner flower shop, and Graham standing under an arch of string lights built by the same team he used to unload trucks beside. Nola wore a dress that didn't have a label, and she walked barefoot across the grass. At the reception, really just a long table, a record player, and too many cupcakes. Graham pulled her aside. "I know this isn't what you're used to," he said. "It's better," she replied, "because it's ours." Penny ran past them, laughing, chased by 2 of Graham's old co-workers who had become unlikely babysitters. The sun dipped low over the rooftops, casting gold across everything. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, Nola curled against him on the old couch they hadn't gotten around to replacing. "I used to think love came after success," she murmured. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And now I know the truth." He kissed her temple. "Tell me." "Love isn't what comes after. It's what makes everything else worth it." Outside, the city kept moving, trains rattling in the distance, horns echoing faintly through the streets. But inside that brownstone, in the quiet space they'd built together, nothing else mattered. Not the contracts, the boardrooms, or the billion-dollar deals. Just a man who took a late shift to make ends meet, and a woman who never expected to find everything she needed in the man who simply showed up. And stayed. The rain came down in sheets as Graham pulled the truck into the driveway of their new home, a 2-story brick house tucked just inside the edge of Lincoln Park, with ivy creeping up one side and a porch swing that Penny had insisted on painting turquoise. The late spring storm had rolled in without warning, and by the time he reached the porch, his sleeves were soaked. Inside, the lights were warm and golden, the smell of something buttery drifting from the kitchen. He kicked off his boots and was just about to call out when he heard voices. "I'm telling you, it needs glitter," Penny said with absolute conviction. "It's not a real sign without glitter." Nola's reply came with a laugh he hadn't heard in weeks, full, unguarded, and slightly exasperated. "We're not putting glitter on something that's going in front of the boardroom. You said it was a welcome new logistics division sign. That means it should sparkle. First impressions matter." Graham stepped into the kitchen to find them seated at the table, markers and construction paper spread across the surface, a tray of croissants cooling beside a half-open laptop. Penny had paint on her nose. Nola had her hair pulled back in a low braid and was wearing one of his old sweatshirts. He leaned against the doorframe. "Is this the new standard for executive presentations?" Penny grinned. "Daddy, we're making a surprise for your office." Nola glanced up, her eyes bright. She insisted the new division needed a proper welcome. "And croissants," Penny added, "because everyone likes snacks." Graham crossed the room and kissed Nola's cheek. "You two are dangerous together." "Efficient," Nola corrected. "We're efficient." He glanced at the laptop screen and noticed a half-drafted email to the Owens group board. "You working tonight?" "Just finalizing the spin-off," she said, tapping a key. "I'm stepping down from day-to-day operations. The official announcement goes out Monday." He blinked. "You're really doing it?" "I already did. Sold 20% of my shares to the internal partners. The rest stays in the trust, but I'm out." He pulled out a chair, still processing. "You didn't say it was going to be this soon." "I wanted to wait until I was sure it was for the right reason," she said, looking at him. "Now I am." Penny looked between them. "Does this mean you're going to be home more?" Nola smiled. "It means I'll finally be around for Saturday pancakes, and maybe even coach your science club team next year." Graham reached over and laced his fingers through hers. "You're really giving it up." "I'm not giving anything up," Nola said. "I'm choosing something better." That weekend, they hosted their first neighborhood dinner, nothing extravagant, just a table set under string lights in the backyard, mismatched chairs borrowed from neighbors, and enough food to feed a small army. Penny brought out her glittered welcome sign, which now read "Welcome to our crew," and stuck it next to the grill with duct tape. As twilight fell, Graham stood by the fire pit, a beer in hand, watching Nola talk to a retired teacher from next door. Her laughter rang out again, softer now, without the edge of fatigue it used to carry. She caught his eye across the lawn, and something unspoken passed between them. Not a question, a certainty. Later, after the last of the dishes had been stacked, and Penny had fallen asleep reading on the couch with her head in a bowl of popcorn, Graham brought Nola a blanket and joined her on the porch swing. "You know," he said, glancing out at the garden bed she and Penny had started last month, "I used to think I'd never have this." She leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Used to think you didn't deserve it." He nodded. "I thought I'd missed my window." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You didn't miss it. You just hadn't opened the right one yet." He turned to her. "You ever miss it, the boardrooms, the pace?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But it's not about what I left behind anymore. It's about what I walk toward." He wrapped an arm around her. "And what's that?" She looked up at him, serious now. This. The kind of love that doesn't need chandeliers or headlines, just a porch swing and the right person beside me." He kissed her, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. Then they sat in silence, the swing creaking gently beneath them, the rain long gone, the stars peeking through the clouds. By summer, the logistics division Graham led had tripled in size. He was no longer surprised when his name showed up on internal memos or board reports. He was respected now, not because of who he was with, but because of what he'd done, what he'd proven. Nola, meanwhile, had started a community initiative offering mentorship programs to underrepresented youth interested in business and engineering. She called it the Langley Project. When Graham found out, he just shook his head and said, "You really don't know how to slow down, do you?" She kissed him in reply. That fall, Penny won first place at her school's innovation fair. She built a water filtration system using recycled materials and named it the Clean Stream Dream. When she received her ribbon, she ran straight into their arms. "I couldn't have done it without my team," she said. "You guys are my team." Years later, when they looked back, it wasn't the galas or the penthouse or the business deals they remembered. It was the porch swing, the science projects, the way Nola's hand always found Graham's in a crowd, and the way he never let go.